nakakuha.
The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. Taliban leaders have marched into Kabul as of Sunday, and they are set to take full control of Afghanistan 20 years after they were removed by the U.S. military. American Enterprise Institute fellow Catherine Zimmerman discusses the latest developments for the future of the country and the region in this report on Bloomberg Daybreak Australia.
It's quite clear that the Taliban have won this war. They took 20 years to do it, and they have proven that their strategy of patience will outlast the United States. When we look at their rhetoric, they're talking about it the same way that they defeated the Soviets and even the English back in the early 1900s.
What does this mean for Afghanistan next in terms of its own democracy and what it means for also the rest of the region?
I think that when we're looking at Afghanistan, we're going to see the Taliban come in and try to masquerade as a legitimate actor to establish a government that others will recognize. That would, of course, be a mistake. This is the Taliban government. It's no different than it was in the 1990s. It has not changed its objectives. We're going to watch the Taliban try to reinstitute Islamic law and probably move slower than they did before. But when we're talking about what the Taliban wants, that vision has not changed, and that means that we have the potential for an al-Qaeda safe haven now in Afghanistan.
Catherine, what are the regional implications, particularly when it comes to Chinese-focused interests?
The regional implications are going to continue to rebound. The United States no longer has a presence really in the region, and we're looking at Chinese, but also Iran, Pakistan, even Russia, trying to rebalance in the region as the US and frankly NATO draw down and cede their influence. There is a lot of finger pointing to be done. I think that regardless of whether you agree with the decision to withdraw, it's very clear that the plan to withdraw was not done well, that it did not account for the risks. When we look at how we got here, President Trump started negotiating with the Taliban to pull the United States out. The deal was upheld by the United States. The Taliban never upheld its part of the bargain. The key part of that was actually breaking ties with al-Qaeda. The Biden administration came in and blew past the deadline for withdrawal, but decided to stay with the deal, citing the risk to American lives if we did not. I think that the mistake was not looking at conditions and also not understanding that adding a bit of a delay to get past the summer fighting season could have actually allowed our partners in Afghanistan to maybe contest the Taliban's offensive.
The Foreign Affairs Department is now making arrangements for the repatriation of Filipinos still left in Kabul in Afghanistan. The department and its foreign service posts in the region are exploring all avenues of cooperation to guarantee the immediate and safe passage of repatriates. The DFA reports that about 32 Filipinos were evacuated to Doha in Qatar and are now awaiting flights back home. That's on top of a group of 19 Filipinos that are set to leave immediately. OCTA Research Group's Guido David says it's possible that nearly half of yesterday's 14,000 new COVID-19 cases are Delta variant infections. On One News's agenda, David noted that the distribution of Delta variant cases have reached almost half, or 49% of sample cases. This means that 7,000 of some days over 14,000 new infections are estimated to be Delta variant cases. David also warns that the continuous increase in daily infections could also mean that the Delta variant cases could climb further to 60 or 70% of all sample cases. David clarified, however, that he's not trying to scare the public or the government. All projections are based on sampling.
And I won't be surprised because it's actually following yung logical progression ng increase niya based on what we saw in other countries. In the US, for example, nagda-double siya every 2 weeks. So what that means is if we are not able to contain this, at some point, magdo-double siya. Maybe we can prevent that kind of increase. Pero at the same time, it's still increasing. That's the concern. It may be 60% or 70% na ng sample. Well, let's say 60% ng samples by next week, and that would be, that would be concerning.
The expert also believed that vaccinations alone will not stop the increase in COVID cases. He said mass testing is the optimal strategy, considering that quarantine violators have a high positivity rate. Contact tracing must also be expanded to immediately isolate potential Delta variant patients.
I think we need to work hard regarding yung mga other factors na sinabi natin, yung contact tracing, the rate. We should really expand testing, maybe augment it with antigen testing. Kung pwede tayo mag-randomized testing sa streets tulad ng ginagawa ng ibang mayor, I think that would really help to control the number of cases.
But on the same program, National Task Force Against COVID-19 Special Advisor Dr. Ted Herbosa reiterated that it's impossible to do mass testing. He disagrees with David's claim that mass testing is the best strategy against the current surge, as testing all Filipinos means wasting expensive resources. Herbosa said the OCTA research group must instead request for more accessible testing so that close contacts may get themselves tested whenever needed.
The word is not mass testing, and I disagree with people pushing for mass testing because they don't understand testing.
Siyempre,
what we should request for is access to testing. When a person needs to be tested, dapat ma-test siya kaagad.
Good.
That's what we need.
Herbosa also threw shade at certain thinkers who only based their analysis on COVID-19 numbers. This despite projections of research groups like OCTA that are based on COVID-19 data having proven accurate in past surges. Herbosa said medical professionals like himself don't make projections as they're more focused in dealing with infections and diseases. He added that the public becomes more confused and scared as too many experts are speaking on the COVID-19 situation.
If you just look at the numbers, you can't do that. In medicine, we're always taught by our teachers, never look at the lab, look at the patient. Because if you just look at the lab results and the numbers, you will always go wrong, which is the truth here. And this is why people are scared, because some people are just looking at numbers, making projections a la fortune telling, and then you scare the people. That's the problem, is many people are speaking and nagugulo yung mga tao na ma-muddle yung issues.
The MMDA clarifies that ECQ has not been extended in Metro Manila for the rest of August. In an interview with Radio 5, MMDA Chairman Benher Abalos explained that they have yet to meet with members of the Metro Manila Council to discuss the issue. Abalos added that regardless of the decision of NCR mayors on lockdown extension, President Duterte still has the final say on the matter.
Mali po yung mga chismis na kumakalat, no? Hindi po, wala pong katotohanan yun na meron daw raw pa siya ang Metro Manila Council, no? Ito yung nilinaw sa akin ni Mayor Olivares dahil siya yung kino-quote at sinabi niya sa akin wala siyang sinasabing ganon, no? At on record wala po kaming meeting pa tungkol po rito. Magmi-meeting pa rin po kami ay Tuesday ng gabi, no? Ito yung pag-uusapan po namin kasama mga dalasa sa health at sa ekonomiya.
With the rising number of COVID-19 infections in Laguna, some admitted patients are forced to stay outside hospital buildings just to get the proper medical attention. Marlene Alcaide now joins us live from Binyan, Laguna to tell us more about this. Marlene, good afternoon. Could you tell us what you're seeing?
Yes, Charles, the provincial government of Laguna reiterates its call to residents to stay at home as COVID-19 cases in the province continues to rise. These days, the Hospital ng Binyan's parking lot no longer keeps cars. Instead, it is now being used by symptomatic patients who are waiting for the results of their RT-PCR test. If they test positive for COVID-19, they will be brought to a quarantine facility for isolation. But if the facility is full, they will be forced to get treatment at the hospital's parking lot. Hospital Director Dr. Melbril Alontes says this is the only way they can think of to accommodate all of their patients. Alonte explains explained their COVID bed capacity could no longer keep up with the influx of patients at the hospital. Laguna Provincial Health Officer Dr. Rene Bagamasdad said that the number of COVID-19 infections in their area started rising this month. As of August 13, Laguna has 4,961 confirmed COVID cases. Alonte added that most of those getting hospitalized are either unvaccinated or have yet to complete their shots. That's why they continue to push for vaccinations among their citizens. Charles, as of now, the enhanced community quarantine is extended here in Laguna until August 20 in order to prevent the further increase in COVID cases in the area. Charles?
Thanks for that, Marlene Al-Qaeda. A Malaysian cabinet member reveals that their Prime Minister, Muhyiddin Yassin, told his party that he's planning to resign. Bloomberg opinion columnist Danny Moss discusses how this development might affect the country's political future on Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
What's different now is that it's blatantly clear that he does not have a majority of MPs in the lower house of parliament supporting him. UMNO, one of the composite parties in his coalition, a large number of their MPs effectively pulled the rug. In some ways, it's remarkable that Muhyiddin has staggered on to this point. This saga, depending on how you define it, has been running for months. In some ways, it's been running ever since March last year when he took over from Mahathir Mohamad.
So what are the options available here? How does this kind of, I guess, best case scenario play out?
What Malaysia really needs, Heidi, is an election to clear the air and make it abundantly transparent who has majority support. However, an election probably isn't feasible right now. A state election in the Borneo state of Sabah last year became a super spreader event. They don't want that. The king is going to have to nominate somebody who he believes has majority support. Ideally, he should go one step further and insist that that person submit to a confidence vote in the House. Failing that, whomever succeeds Muhyiddin will be subject to the same erosion of legitimacy.
It's interesting. The two fatal flaws that are cited for Muhyiddin, are these weaknesses and vulnerabilities that would potentially afflict any successor?
Look, the fundamental problem that's plagued Malaysian politics since at least March last year is the politically dominant ethnic Malays are split. There used to be one dominant Malay party which led national governments since independence from Britain. That party was UMNO at the centre of a coalition. There are now multiple parties competing for the mainstream ethnic Malay vote. That is the root cause of this. The old UMNO-led edifice no longer applies. However, the new thing hasn't yet taken shape. So you've got this enormous fluidity.
Here's a quick look at some of today's headlines. Bulacan, Laguna, Iloilo City, and Cagayan de Oro are back under MECQ status starting today. The Philippines has recorded its first case of COVID-19's Lambda variant. And the OCTA research group sees COVID-19 infections still increasing in Metro Manila despite the 2-week ECQ. And those are the top stories at this hour. Join us again at 1 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Just register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.